Hello and welcome to Podcasting Digital Audio Storytelling with Clayton. In this course, we are giving each other tips of producing podcasts that can attract an audience that people can listen to and relate with. So, we want to take each other through the whole podcasting process from developing concept, from coming up with sound that doesn't irritate the ear, and promoting your podcast. But first, we want to hear what a podcast is. Podcasts have become very popular, particularly with the audiences. These are digital audio files. They are downloadable, and someone can subscribe to your podcast, and they are notified whenever you put through an episode, and they can then listen to your podcast. And the difference, perhaps, with the other audio storytelling, like the radio, is that it has to be a creative, personalized storytelling format. Is it open and democratic? That's another question. Podcasts are for everyone. That's the thing. So it means you can give it your style, and you don't have to be told how to do it, what to do, what issues to focus on, and how to give it a certain treatment. I mean, you have no editor, you are the storyteller. And someone may ask, so what kind of podcasts, or rather, what kind of people do podcasts? Um, because they may think, okay, this is not for them. So everyone, everyone can do a podcast. Of someone who's an aviation enthusiast, if you do love planes, it means that there are probably thousands of others who love planes just as you do. Not even thousands, but actually millions. So that means you have a story to tell to those people. That's your potential audience. From the top of my head, if I am to think about storytelling for people who love planes, and I'm trying to think of the kinds of episodes that I can broadcast, that I can come up with for my content, think of, say, focusing on one episode. You can focus on the two biggest airplane manufacturers, Boeing and Airbus. You can focus on the biggest passenger planes, the B747 and the A38. I mean, the Airbus A38. I mean, that's what I am interested in. You can get into what it takes for one to be an air hostess or an air host. You can look into, piloting. What do you need for you to be a pilot? How can you go to an aviation school and be a pilot? You can look at the airports, the airport security, quite a lot of things that you can really look at when you're developing your concept and you're coming up with the different episodes. If you're a teacher, I mean, you are used to the lecture sort of environment where you are in front of a class and your students are listening to you, you're asking questions, etc., etc. So a podcast can come in as a dynamic way of giving instruction. And because podcasts in their nature, or by their nature, they're more intimate. We always listen to podcasts from earphones, from our phones. So it means that it's an intimate format of audio storytelling. And if you are going to be introducing concepts to students, they may be way much more engaging than perhaps when you are in class. They may not relate that much because there are others around them. They don't feel the issue personalized as probably it would be on a podcast. Focus on gardening, you have a huge audience. Perhaps the one thing that you can focus on gardening is, I don't know much about gardening actually, but plants die, and for people who love gardening, that's a problem. Those are the things you can focus on. How to make sure that you don't have plants dying on you. You can even develop fictional stories. Think of it as drama, and that is where you give your characters some voices and make it more interesting. So two ways in which you can approach the podcast. You can serve a niche audience, and this is an audience that shares the same passion as you. So it means your topics that you're focusing on have that niche audience. Or you can go general, where you can look at something journalistic, or this what. So here is a broad range of topics that your interests and ultimately your podcast can then fall in, or that you can focus in. I mean, some like comedy. There's so much space. There's so many podcasts that are comedic in nature. Some like government politics or local government. You can produce content for kids and family. It can be news, it can be society and culture, it can be education, it can be music, it can be I mean, there is a wide range of issues that your podcast can focus on. Perhaps you are already a journalist and you're like, but I'm already into storytelling, so why should I bother with this intimate kind of storytelling, audio storytelling? If you're a print journalist, that's perfect. That means you are doing something different. You're covering stories and you want to give them a voice to the story. You want to tell them in a personalized way. And in your daily work, you are limited in terms of the number of words that you can write, and the podcast can come as a way of expanding in terms of space, and then thereby coverage in terms of treatment of the stories. And you can then choose stories, because you possibly cover a lot of stories. You can then choose stories, select stories that you think these ones can work with a more dynamic storytelling approach. And besides, you don't want to be monotonous. You want to develop new skills. You want to be a dynamic journalist. Someone is already a broadcaster. So what's the point? I mean, I'm already in radio. But in that radio, what formats have you been using to tell stories in radio? Have you considered exploring new approaches? I know that in some countries, documentaries, radio features are a big thing. In some countries, how about you explore that? You start telling the stories in a documentary format. I mean, at times you are limited by the range of issues that you cover as a journalist, and there is a subject that you are passionate about. I mean, you're passionate about aeroplanes, but in your daily coverage, you're covering sport, you're covering local politics, you are covering, I mean, gender or whatever. So this is a way of you getting to explore a subject that you are passionate about. And besides, you have an editorial policy when you're working for radio, and you can't give stories some sort of personal treatment. Now, with a podcast, you can then give those stories the personal treatment and tell the stories perhaps you would like to, without perhaps being shepherded to tell the stories in a certain way. And besides, your portfolio needs a boost. If you're going to do something else other than the regular radio work or regular television work that you've been doing, it means you are widening your portfolio. It needs that variety. So how do you approach a podcast? You have two options. One could be the freestanding episodes, where you don't need a prior knowledge of the other episodes for you to understand the current episodes that you are listening to, that someone, your listener, is listening to. And this works very well when you're capturing different stories. And I mean, this all depends on what exactly you're covering. Or it can be serialized. Here you have episodes that are progressively building on each other. Think of it as a television soap, where what happened last week explains what's happening this week. So you have episodes that are progressively taking the story forward like that. And if you're going to approach them in this way, there has to be a flow. They have to the story has to flow. And I have seen this with serialized investigative reporting. That is where you have you have different issues being tackled as the story is building up. So those are the two ways of trying to build up your series of episodes. Now, this one is possibly everyone's concern. Good gracious, and where do I get the equipment? The first thing when you want to start a podcast is to throw away the excuses. Go easy, go light. Mobile phones, they're a good starter pack. You have enough already with your mobile phone. You can record, you can edit, you can publish on a mobile phone. Some few weeks back, I asked an undergraduate class to produce podcasts using their mobile phones and Anchor. They put through some interesting podcasts, and some of them were very interesting. Even the recording, the audio quality was good enough. Now there's an app called Ferrite. This one you can use it for recording and editing. I like Ferrite because it has a multi-track kind of recording, so you can have a track for one audio, another one for another clip, and you build on your story like that in the editing process. There is Anchor. Anchor is good for recording, trimming your recordings, putting them together, and publishing as well. Now, if you want to go a bit further and you are investing in the craft, you want to produce good sound, etc. You have entry-level microphones that you can shop around for. You can these are USB microphones that you can attach to your laptop. You also need a PC or a laptop actually, and you also need a portable sound recorder that you can that you can go out and record using. You also need a digital audio workstation. So a digital audio workstation, these are sound editing, so sound recording and editing softwares. There is Audacity, which is an entry-level software. It is free. Then there's Adobe Audition, which is paid for, and this one is really a great digital audio workstation. And as we go forward with the course, we'll be using Adobe Audition to have some demonstrations on how you can then edit or mix sound when you're producing your episode. Now, what now? Now that I know all about this, the first thing is to plan for your podcast. What is the podcast going to be about? And you also plan on structure. We're going to go through all these elements, one by one as we go through the course. The structure, how is the sound going to be organized in my episodes? You need to think about the interviews. Am I going to have interviews, or is it going to be me talking? And if I'm going to have interviews, is this feasible? Who am I going to talk to? Is it going to be able for me to access these people? You also have to think about the pilot episode. This is your selling point, and most importantly, the pilot episode determines the structure of all the other episodes that are going to come after it. You also need to think about, how am I going to promote this? How am I going to get people to know about it? I mean, social media perhaps, and the various other ways in which you reach your contacts. So you have to think about consistency again. If I am going to come up with this podcast, am I going to be consistent with it? Am I going to stick around? Am I going to produce more episodes? And am I going to serve the audience? Because as you produce your episodes, your podcast, you start building expectations. You start building a following actually, and people start getting interested in what you are doing. Now you need to think about whether you are going to be consistent or not, and when you are consistent, how are you going to keep that consistency? Now, can I fail? Of course, that's the nature of things. Now you can fail. It's the 21st century. When we fail, what do? We try to change things and approach a different approach. You fail again, you repeat with a different approach. If you make it, go wild.